Hi, this is Becky with Icing on Top Becky's Cakes, and today I'm going to show you how to do a buttercream knit sweater using a silicone mold called Marvelous Molds. And I've seen this technique around. This is not original with me, but I wanted to share it with you all because I looked everywhere and I could not find a tutorial for this specific technique, but I'd heard a lot about it and I wanted it to be out there so that everyone could see this technique. This here is the mold I'm showing you. It is a smaller mold, so you have to do a section at a time, which is a little bit of a nuisance, but it's worth it because I really like how it looks. So this is what it looks like when you only have one of the sections on there. So how you get that on is first you're just gonna stick your buttercream, plop it right on to the mold that you're gonna do. And you can do this with so many different kinds of molds too. There are a lot of different molds out there and most of them are for fondant, right? But as you know, I am not a fondant person. I am definitely a buttercream person, and everyone has their favorite medium. Buttercream just happens to be my medium that I work with. So we're gonna press this buttercream right into the mold. I kind of wiggle my offset spatula back and forth, and then I press down as I wiggle, and I pull towards me as I press down the buttercream, because you don't want to just pull straight up. You pull straight up and you're pulling some of that buttercream right back out of what you were trying to press it into. So we're trying to press it in, and then I kind of pull down as I'm pressing in. So I'm going to do this end first, and then I flip it around, I do the other end. And we want to make sure we get all the corners, all the edges are completely pressed in so that we get all those fun details. Flip this around so we get the other end and do the exact same thing, wiggle it and press down, and then pull towards me as I'm pressing down to get all those details in there. Now I saw this one's called Marvelous Molds and I got it on Amazon, but I've seen a lot of other different textured molds out there that would be a lot of fun to try. Now some of them are longer and larger than this one, and that might be even better in some cases because you can press bigger sections at a time, whereas this one I had to do this in 3 stages. So I did the first section that you saw on there, and now I have to do the second section. So I'm going to show you how I got this section on, and that'll also show you how I did the first section, but I wanted to show you what the done deal looked like before I even started here. That way you know what you're in for. This is going to go on in 3 sections. You're gonna have to do this 3 times because of the size of the mold. Now that it's all pressed in, I'm just gonna smooth it out, and then I'm gonna clean up these edges before pressing it into my cake. Now I have a roughly iced cake that I'm gonna press this into, and I wasn't so concerned with how my cake looks right now because I'm gonna be, of course, adding all this buttercream to it as well. So if it's even crumb coated, but a heavy enough crumb coat that this will stick to would be a good idea. So yes, mine is very roughly iced, as you can see, because I'm not worried about any details until later. Then we do all the cleanup. Now I'm gonna put this, line it up with my last one, line up that edge with the edge of the last mold that I just did, and then the bottom, I have at the very bottom, there's a little rim around the top, and I'm leaving that on the top rather than the bottom because I want the bottom knit scarf to go all the way down. The top part we're gonna pipe. We're gonna use some piping because we're gonna have to use some piping to clean up some details anyway. So I also wanted to do that piping for the border around the top. Now, as you can see, I'm pressing this from both sides of my cake. I actually have my hand on the other side of my cake. I'm using a wad of paper towels so that my actual hand isn't touching the cake, but this cake has been in the freezer, so it's not disturbing it too terribly much. And also I'm using a fondant smoother. This is probably the only time I actually use fondant smoothers is for my buttercream projects. So here I'm using a fondant smoother to kind of press it all in, get it all even, make sure that it's pressed in really good before I put it in the freezer so that it doesn't, like, the buttercream doesn't come off. So we're just pressing it in, sealing it down, and realizing that yes, we are going to be doing cleanup later with piping, so I'm not so concerned with the little details that are coming out, the sides and stuff. That'll all be cleaned up when we do our piping. Once I get this on here really good, I am going to put it in the freezer for about an hour and a half before trying to pull it off. You know, that's a long time, but I want to make sure that is really solid before I even try to peel it off. Otherwise, you're gonna be peeling off part of your design. I've pulled it out of the freezer right here, and now I'm gonna slowly peel a corner, and I wanna do this slowly so that I make sure I'm not peeling the design with me as I go. And I'm gonna be pulling this side, and then I'm gonna pull from the other side and leave the middle where it's at, and that'll come off last. See, this is kind of how it is, and you can see how you're gonna be doing a little bit of cleanup because obviously it's buttercream, so anywhere you see little pieces coming off, you can easily pipe in a few details to kind of cover that up. So, but it does a fairly good job of staying in place. You just gotta peel it off nice and slow. Now I have in the past tried brushing this mold with cornstarch before doing this, and I felt that I lost more of the detail when I did that. So I am not gonna recommend brushing this particular mold with this fine of a detail with the cornstarch, because sometimes it gets in those little grooves and then you lose some of that detail. As you see where it fits together, that's where we're gonna do some of our piping. Each place where it fits together and around the top, that'll all be piping things and any details that we need to correct. So the mold does a majority of the work, but you will be responsible for all the cleanup afterwards, all the piping details. To make it look like a coherent piece, you're definitely gonna need to do a little bit of piping just to fix that. And here's my third one. I followed the same process of, pressing it into the mold, pressing it on my cake, and putting it in the freezer. So this is my last section. And then there's gonna be a little gap where they don't quite fit together, and that's gonna be called the back of my cake. So we're gonna call this the back, and we're just gonna do some freehand piping at the back of my cake to kind of look like it's the end of the sweater or whatever your image is supposed to be. But yeah, we are gonna do freehand piping at the back of the cake, and I'll show you that in a minute here. So for where they fit together, I decided I'm going to use a large piping tip. This is a number 10 writing tip. And I didn't want to look like I was trying to copy that small fine knitting that they were doing. So I'm going to do a larger knit right in between these areas and around the top. So this is going to look more like the larger knit part of a sweater. And if you've seen me do the cross stitch, that what I want to say? And this is not cross stitching, no, but it's the cross piping. You kind of almost look like you're doing a cross as you go back and forth. You're kind of covering the tail, piping, pulling, and filling in that gap by going right next to the other one. I used this technique when I did the piping the buttercream scarf tutorial. If you've seen that one, I used a different tip. I used a star tip for that one, and that is the whole cake just piped. But I really like the fine detail that this mold gives, so this is a lot of fun to do too. So I'm going to do the same thing across the top, only I'm going sideways with this one. And if you want to practice this piping technique, it is one of under my buttercream borders. I even have a practice piping sheet. If you want to practice these different buttercream borders and stuff, they're a good idea to practice before you put on a cake. But this one's a very simplistic border, so it went really well with the sweater, I thought. I used my mock American buttercream recipe for this, and that is also on my channel if you're interested in trying out the exact same buttercream as well. So again, that is the buttercream borders tutorial if you're interested in seeing a bunch of different buttercream borders and how to pipe them, and the piping practice sheets. But thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as fun as I did with this tutorial, and please subscribe to my channel.